Welcome into college football previews here, WagerTalk.com. We're talking the SEC, and in this video, we're talking the SEC East here. I am Drew Martin, joined by Robbie Veno. Rob, we got the SEC East. It kind of sets up there for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, if we're still allowed to call it that, in Jacksonville, talking about Florida versus Georgia. What about the favorites here in the SEC East, Robbie? You liking anything on this side?
Yeah, it would seem like, it's a Georgia race to lose, right? Even Florida's down a little bit personnel-wise this year, but you would make them the second choice odds makers have. And then there's the rest of the pack. Drew, what's interesting about this division is the amount of upheaval in coaching. And you have 3 of 7 teams that have got an entirely new coaching staff where head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator are concerned. And all 3 of those schools we'll be going through system overhauls. So we won't go in depth with it. We'll just go real quick here. South Carolina, let's start with them, where Will Muschamp is out. Shane Beamer, Frank Beamer's son, is in. He's hired offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield and defensive coordinator Clayton White. For those who don't know the name Clayton White, he has run the Western Kentucky defense the last 4 years, and WKU, by Conference USA standards, has been very, very good. There'll be a small switch to a 4-2-5 here from a 4-3 defense. So, the spring game, a lot of good reports, Drew, but we've done a lot of these conference previews. There never seems to be a negative report coming out of spring. Everybody's happy. Looks to be that way right now. The team has said that they're very, pleased with the system switches and whatnot. We'll see when fall camp gets here. Tennessee, another major upheaval, right? Josh Heupel, UCF head coach, now the head coach here at Tennessee. He brings his high-flying air raid offense into Knoxville. Offensive coordinator, he brings with him Alex Golish, comes in, so there's familiarity there, which is always a good thing. And the defensive coordinator is going to be Tim Banks, former defensive coordinator at Penn State. So that's a pretty solid group there. And then Vanderbilt, all the years of Derek Mason are gone. It's now Clark Lee. He was the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame. He's a Vanderbilt alum. He takes over the reins. You get David Rye, a very young offensive coordinator here, teamed with Joey Lynch. We'll remember him. MAC fans will really remember him from Ball State. Joey Lynch. This is going to be a high-flying offensive system. And defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. So you have all those changes, Drew, inside those 3 teams all going through the first year of a system. Kentucky has changed offensive coordinators and their system. Missouri changed defensive coordinators. Steve Wilkes, formerly head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. He had that 1 year there before Cliff Kingsbury. He's now the DC there. Not much change. And Florida brings back their co-DCs, Billy Gonzalez and John Hevesy. Those 2 guys were defensive coordinators, co-defensive coordinators prior to the hiring or elevating of Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson leaves. These 2 guys get their jobs back. So they'll be co-DCs for the 3rd time in 4 years. That's a lot of change. The only team I didn't mention in that, Georgia, your favorite.
Yeah, and you talk about the favorites there, Robbie, how we let off the video here. In the East side, it has kind of gotten to, Georgia and Florida there at the top. But talk about under-the-radar teams with all the changes here. And as sports bettors, finding change and going off of that point forward is a great way to win in the sports betting market. So looking at futures here, Robbie, we get the second longest tenured head coach in Lexington, talking about Stoops here. Could Kentucky be a side? Some people talking about the Wildcats maybe kind of having a puncher's chance here in the SEC. Is that a team you have circled, or maybe one of the other teams in the SEC East that could give the Florida Gators or Georgia Bulldogs a run for their money on the East side?
Yeah, I think Kentucky, you always know what you're going to get out of them under head coach Stoops, right, Drew? It's going to be a team that's going to play physical for 60 minutes. The offensive switch there, it's a team that averaged 110 and 124 passing yards the last 2 years. So something had to be done. Now, we have to give them a break for 2 years ago when all their quarterbacks were hurt, and they basically had to go to a quarterback run-only system. That's why the passing yards were down. But they're trying to, implement a solid passing scheme there. I think that might take a little time. I'm looking more towards Missouri as a mid-pack team, right? This is the second year of Eli Drinkwitz's system. And boy, the Missouri players have bought in. Lots of skill talent there. Quarterback returns, Connor Bazelak. The season total for wins, Drew, is 7. And I thought that was a little low when I looked over the schedule. I think it sets up for them to get 8 wins here, which would cash an over ticket. The offense brings back 8 returning starters. As I mentioned, Connor Bazelak, the quarterback, returns as well. They've had the least disruptions of any of the mid-pack type teams in this particular division. There's potential here for 5 home wins, which when you only need 7, getting 5 at home is good. And the only real unwinnable road game I found for Missouri was Georgia. So I think Missouri has a real good shot at cashing an over 7 wins ticket.
And Robbie, looking for picks out there, guys. I was looking towards the Kentucky Wildcats, and talk about their quarterback room. Joey Gatewood, the transfer from Auburn, the Penn State transfer as well. And when you look at the odds, depending what sports book you want to go off of, you can find Kentucky out there in the plus 5,000 range there. So you can get some big plus prices on them to win the conference. Obviously, it's a long shot. That comes with the territory. But when you talk about, what Stoops has been able to do there in Lexington, kind of upping the recruiting game, I think Kentucky might be riding under the radar. Robbie, throw it over to you for maybe a team to fade here on the East Side. What team you think is kind of gonna fall short of expectations in the betting market this upcoming season?
Yeah, and remember, we're talking about outright wins here because we'll talk season win total in this with this particular team to fade. We're not talking about point spread each week. This team could cover point spreads. I just don't think they're going to make it to 6.5 wins. So I'm going to fade Tennessee. Drew talked earlier about the coaching change here, right? Heupel brings his system in. That takes a little while. Not that Tennessee doesn't have an abundance of talent, and it'll be good to see Josh Heupel as the head coach of a Power 5 team. He was offensive coordinator at Oklahoma and did some damage. But here it'll be his team. 2 reasons why I think they'll stay under 6.5. The first off is this team was absolutely raided by the transfer portal. According to 247 Sports, 4 of the top 14 college football transfers this year left Tennessee. Their top 2 running backs, their best linebacker, and their best left tackle, all gone. That doesn't help matters any. And, when coaches come in their first year, they're kind of weeding personnel out anyway to get it to their liking. So I don't think that sets up well. And then when I looked at the schedule, honestly, you go through their 12-game schedule, and I could only find 5 games where I could say, yes, Tennessee will be favored in that game. Season win total is 6.5. Seemed to be off by a couple wins to me. I find 7 instances where they either will be underdog or could be underdog. I don't know that they can pull off a 7-5 season here in Heupel's first go-round, Drew. So I'm going to fade Tennessee, play them under 6.5 wins.
I like that one, Robbie. I like it a lot in terms of season win total market. Looking towards the under on Tennessee, losing 7 of their last 8 games this past season. They've kind of fallen under expectations more years than not of recency, Robbie. Plus only returning, 5 offensive starters. I like where you're going with that, Robbie, in terms of fading the Tennessee Volunteers. Rob, throw it back over to you for anything else you wanted to throw out here in the SEC East before we shut this down.
Well, I think where Georgia's concerned, let's get back to the favorite here real quick, Drew, and just talk about the fact that as far as, we know Kirby Smart has recruited like crazy to Georgia. They're constantly in the top 5 now as far as recruiting across the nation is concerned. But this year, they add 3 of the top 9 college football transfers out of the portal. They did the best job of raiding the portal of any team in the SEC. So I think Georgia may have distanced themselves between, or at least created more distance between them and Florida for this season. And as we said off the top, it's really theirs to lose at this point in time with JT Daniels coming back. He got those games last year under his belt in the air raid system. He had played air raid at USC, so he was the best guy for the job. I think Georgia's absolutely loaded, and I'd be hard-pressed to find anybody else that could win this SEC East, barring, multiple injuries to this Georgia team.
He's Robbie Veno. I am Drew Martin. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check out WagerTalk at sportsmemo.com. Also, the WagerTalk live odds screen, best odds service, best free odds service in the industry, and a lot of free college football news. So, guys, we got the SEC West video as well. Make sure to check that out. WagerTalk YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Best of luck with your bets.